Okay. Everyone, please remember to sign into the document. Next up is introductions. I see a lot of familiar faces, so I'm going to assume we don't have any introductions today. Release planning.
All right, I'll talk a little bit about Pack. I think since last week, we talked about Pack potentially pushing back the date for release till after the holidays and therefore probably the new year. I think that is still going to be the path forward. I think, we just haven't had enough traction to really deliver something that's, I guess, complete in the sense that users would expect it to be. So it doesn't seem like there's anything critical there that's really requiring us to, work around in any form or fashion. So that's the update there. Another thing, I guess I did a little bit of work on Pack Orb yesterday, and I did release a new version of that. There is yet another fix that I put in that I wanted to release. And so I want to add it to the agenda to talk about Pack Orb ownership, since I believe Travis was taking care of that. And I want to make sure that I'm not stepping on anybody's toes and stuff like that.
Sounds good. Thanks, Javier. Do you want to give us a lifecycle update, Natalie?
So I just put up a draft release for lifecycle 0.10.0, which will implement Buildpack API 0.5 as well as Platform API 0.5. And we're just doing some validation right now of that artifact before declaring it good. And we'll hopefully ship today, barring anything unexpected.
Sounds good. Excited for that lifecycle release. All right, outstanding RFCs. Let me open this thing up. Do you all see outstanding RFCs?
Yes.
Great. I need to have fewer windows with GitHub open because it's getting hard to tell in the preview if I'm opening the right one. Starting at the bottom, offline build packages, RFC. I don't see these folks here today. I'm assuming they've gone out for the holidays. I just went through this today and left a bunch of comments that are all just like small tweaks around names and usage stuff. I'm really happy with the overall idea at this point.
Is your comment on the asset? I was reading through your comments this morning too. The like multiple asset thing. I think it was like one of the first things in your length of many things that you commented on. Is that like a blocking thing for you that you want changed or clarified rather?
Like the naming thing? Or from multiple this question?
Yeah.
This is not a blocking thing. I don't really care what the answer to this question is. I just wanted to ask it and hear people tell me, no, this isn't a use case we care about.
There was one on the actual config, right, of the file, but
I think a lot of my suggestions were about file schemas and names, right? And I have come to care a lot about this because some of the inconsistencies in our early file schemas really bother me now and sometimes create weirdness where we have to do a bunch of data transformations rather than just, like embedding one object inside of another. I would love to push us towards something consistent. So that's sort of the motivation behind a lot of these comments. We're past the point where I think the ideas here, correct me if I'm wrong, everyone else are up for the debate, but it's more about what command names and file schemas we want to live with for a long time.
Yeah, I'm just more curious, not that I disagree with any of your stuff, just for moving this forward, is to say like, you just need to sit down and talk with David or have him, or Daniel, and have him, I guess, sort it out.
Yeah.
To move this forward, or do you want to move this into FCP?
I think I would like to talk with him and sort it out first. I mean, we could always move it into FCP because I think there's no hard requirement that we have to keep these exact strings in pack, but it's easier for people when they look at the RFC if the RFC matches exactly what got implemented in pack, so it might be worth doing.
Okay.
I'm going to skip layer origin metadata because has anyone talked to the greenhouse folks about whether, I thought we had sort of discussed moving this into draft because it's dormant at the moment.
Yeah, we can move it into draft for now. He said last I talked to him, he's like, he'll probably go in and close it, but he said Monday at the latest, but that was last Wednesday. So that didn't happen. So I think dropping it in a draft and then I'll continue seeing whether they want to bring it back to life. I think that makes sense.
I mean, if they're interested in closing it, we can just close it, right?
Yeah, I think they were going to just make sure that they were ready to close it. Like they were just buttoning up stuff on their end.
Okay.
I'll just do this for now. Okay. Project descriptor flexibility is in draft. Did you want to talk about that at all, Terrence?
No.
Okay. Stack Buildpacks, I think is still waiting on.
We'll talk about it tomorrow.
Me to read through it. We can talk about it tomorrow. I won't get to it before tomorrow. Just leave it for last on my RFC review list because it's so long. Application mix-ins is the same thing. This one, manifest report TOML is now complete. Its final comment period, and we've created all the issues. So the assigned team member, Ben, is now free to merge that.
Copy that.
Do we have any of the Stackify representatives here? No, it looks like this still needs reviews from a couple of folks. So take a look at that one, everybody. Registry search API.
I think it's on the list for today.
Yeah.
Okay, on the list for today. CMB user research. Joe and I have approved, if other folks could take a look. Add new build pack, descriptor keys, RFC. Is there any status update you wouldn't give on this one, Joe, other than folks should review it?
Yeah, I'll put it as the last thing on the agenda today if we have time for it. Kind of ties into the search API.
Can we do 126 and 127, see if we can group them, team them?
Sure.
Oh, right.
You mean the labels?
Yeah, add the label.
What is the label for user research?
That's got to be core.
Core team.
Yeah. Okay. Done.
Oh yeah, I was gonna add the label for this and I couldn't decide what team. I think it's implementation.
Kind of
But then it's kind of
the
a
whole world, right? I call
Yeah,
it
that's-
implementation though.
Well, yeah, that's why I was wondering if it was core or something like that. But yeah, I don't know.
Turns out everything's implementation.
Shit rolls downhill. That's
Unless you want to call it core, because actually it all touches the spec first. But I
yeah, that's what I was
try not
thinking.
to oppress
Yeah,
you all
that
with
could-
too many of
yeah.
them.
That's fine. Let's just give it to core.
I feel like that's one of the problems with these RFCs. Like implementation isn't implementation of the spec. So literally everything
It's an
that
implementation.
is implementation is also core, right? Great. That's that. Next item on the agenda, Tecton ownership. I copied this down from future topics. I wasn't sure if we actually got to it the last time because sometimes those sit around and get old. Does anyone remember who put that in future topics?
It's been there for a long time.
I was going to take a
Javier, maybe?
wild stab and say it was Javier. I put it down
Yeah.
here so we could either delete it or talk about it if we hadn't.
I guess we could make it an announcement, right? Yeah, I'll definitely be taking more of a look at Tecton right now. I'm working through some other integrations, PackOrb being one of them, which is also on the list. But yeah, Tecton would be here relatively soon on my plate.
Cool. Next item, PackOrb.
Cool. So to add a little bit of context here, so in the past, I think PackOrb was one of those things that was contributed by Joe. Then Terrence not Terrence, Travis took a little bit of ownership in adding some functionality to it, and ultimately, I believe, taking care of the releases for it. And a lot of it, kind of stemmed also from the idea that Travis was on the track to become a platform maintainer. I think those plans have ultimately changed. My understanding is that there's still a lot of, I guess, involvement requested from, I guess, the Salesforce team to continue working, or at least being a heavy influence for the PackOrb. But I do want to essentially see if we could draw the line, and if that makes the most sense for the platform team, and I guess myself focusing on integrations, to take on PackOrb so that Travis could focus more on the distribution team stuff.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's already in the platform team in the community repo. But yeah, in practice, not really. But yeah, that sounds fine. I think it's going to be fairly stable. It was meant to do a thing, but it does. If it was gonna go beyond that, it'd be like adding things like package build pack or stuff like that. But we don't have an immediate need for it. So
cool. Yeah, then I guess I can, continue moving it forward. I know Travis had some ideas of where he wanted to take it, so maybe we'll discuss that offline somewhere. But yeah, I guess I'll formulate some sort of release plan or something, and take care of, there's a couple issues and feature requests. So I'll take those on, and if there's anything else, just let me know.
cool, thanks. And so you are able to release?
Yeah, I think Travis set it up so it's just tagging it, right? So I think one of the things that we were missing before is like release notes. So I'll probably do something very similar that we did with Pack, is like try to milestone all the PRs and then produce release notes that'll publish it automatically with what Travis already had.
Awesome, thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Javier.
Sounds good.
My screen went black, didn't it?
It's been black.
What?
Yeah, I thought you were just being secretive.
I guess. All right. I guess something's wrong with my laptop. Got to restart it.
Next item, search API RFC, Travis.
Yeah, I don't have a ton to really go over like I've had in the past. I think it's starting to solidify a little more based on all the discussions we've had, but just wanted to point out a few things really quick. I'll just share 1 second. right now, one of the big topics of discussion that we left off with last week, I believe it was this approach of, should we go all in and use a database and have kind of a multi-tier API application? And we kind of left it in the open. And then Joe and I, we had some discussion, and based on feedback, we decided to go ahead and proceed doing a more all-in approach, which will encompass a database and moving forward with what we currently have in the proposed RFC. So nothing here is planning on being changed as far as the payload is concerned. So just wanted to point that out, that we are going to go ahead and move forward based on the suggestions of everybody from the last week working group. I think it was Terrence and Javier had some good input regarding that topic. I know there's some also last minute odds and ends that I'm just fielding right now. I think Emily, you had a few things, and maybe there's a few typos too that I need to clean up, which I'll address outside of this. A couple of things to point out too that I mentioned but probably didn't call out enough was the fact that we are going to have versioned endpoints starting with this V and then the number. Obviously the first one will be V1, and then it'll just increment as we release changes to the API that would merit breaking changes. In addition, pagination will be supported. We'll be drawing most of that inspiration from the GitHub way of using pagination. And those are really the big ticket items, unless something has
one of the things that I think Emily and Javier had commented on was like supporting unofficial registries. So like I guess like the idea is like you'd stand up your own instance of the search API or implementation of the search API for some other registry and how we support that. But I think that is like explicitly out of scope. I don't know if it's already called out in the RFC, but I think we should. Like our goal in doing this, both the API and then the front end, is our goals don't include anything other than the official registry. So, and I think most people that set up an unofficial registry will probably just use like a Git repo without all the GitHub stuff. So I just want to, like, if possible, just completely cut that. Not that we would never do that in the future.
Makes sense.
But that, yeah, the implication is that a pack search command would not search anything other than the official registry, which I think is a good thing to start, because we don't want to, I think that's the best experience for the end user.
Yeah, I think probably on that too is just the point of potentially speccing out the API eventually, is that if someone wants to implement that, they can, but they're not going to necessarily use our reference implementation, because a public registry has very different implications than a private one.
Yeah, and then I guess for me, it was like resetting the expectation, right? Because I think based on the previous conversations, it seemed like we were very much leaning towards this, very specced out API that was going to somehow be tied to the registries to support unofficial registries. But yeah, if we're trying to do something a lot more experimental in a sense, right, or very tailored to our very specific use case, then maybe, as you mentioned, Joe, just calling it out more explicitly at the summary would be sufficient. But otherwise, I think we're maybe tying two very different ideas.
Yeah, I think we should definitely add that explicitly. I wouldn't call it experimental though. Like, I think this is like the pattern you see with like Ruby gems and some other package servers or whatever you want to call them, because like Ruby gems is the front end for it, and the API, the search API for it is just for Ruby gems. And then you have like third parties like Gemgate and things like that, but they're headless, or they have their completely own implementation of a UI or API into that from a like automated tool way. Like our goal is to spec out the the machine interactions, but not necessarily to spec out and like make generic the user interface for it or the programmer interface. Like, yeah, I guess that's the wrong way to phrase it.
Yeah, I think in most of those package ecosystems, usually it's the mirroring and stuff that's more important. So it's like the index, being able to replicate the index easily for those kind of use cases. But I think if the API spec, there's no reason that if someone wants to implement it, they can. It just,
Yeah.
we won't provide a reference implementation probably.
Mhm.
I'm totally fine with it only working for our registry. That's what I thought Javier was suggesting, adding it to the drawbacks sort of because it's an explicit trade-off, which I thought was a good thing to document, but
Yeah,
I've approved
totally.
it. I'm fine with this trade-off.
Okay. Yeah, I'll definitely make that a clear point.
One of the comments that I left, I was talking with Joe about this a little bit, was
Mhm.
what do you think about, I left this comment in the RC, but what do you think about namespacing when not just V1, but like API? So in theory, like registry.buildpacks.io could be where the front end
Oh, I
thing
saw
people
that.
go to.
Yeah, I think we should do that. I don't think that's part of the
Yeah.
specification though. That's just the like, that's just an extended, not host, but like the prefix
Yeah.
to the endpoints. Like if somebody else wants to stand up acmeco/v1, like that doesn't, I wouldn't say that's like, that would break, right?
Yeah, it's just the base URL, right? And it's just making
The
sure
base
that
URL.
the
Yeah.
links inside of the document, right? Like the results
the
take into
example.
consideration the base URL.
Yeah. So the suggestion, Terrence, you're referring to is like having instead of registry.buildpacks.io, have like api.registry.buildpacks.io.
Or
No, I
just
think what
like a namespace slash. I think if you're gonna do that, you should
okay.
just cut, like if you want to do what Joe's saying, I think you should cut out probably the host name kind of thing like npm or RuGems does in the kind of description, just so it's clear.
Yeah, just replace it with like base, whatever Javier said.
I think
like
people
base
just do
URL,
slash.
base host.
People
Yeah.
just do
Got
like
it.
a slash.
Okay.
Yeah. We're gonna do the API thing, but that's just more of an implementation detail, which helps us separate the UI and the API.
Yeah, that sounds good. I think that makes sense.
It probably doesn't matter for the registry spec, but it would be nice if you could copy paste the examples from this RFC and they work, but you know,
Mhm.
it's not crucial if they don't.
Yeah, I agree with that. We could still do that though. We do this exact thing in the Heroku documentation, and there's a clever thing where it's, I don't know, it's called out in a way. We can figure out a way to do that, I think.
I mean, I think it's more important probably in the documentation more than the RFC to get that right. Because I feel like some, like Joe's saying, some of that's implementation detail and some of those things may change, right? Of like some host or
That's
whatever.
true.
So like the URL that we described may or may not work exactly. It may be a slightly different URL.
Mhm. Yeah.
Have you thought, like you're sharing a screen, right, of the README here? Have you thought about accept header stuff, if that's a thing you want to have as part of the API?
As far as just having like application JSON.
Application JSON or doing the
Yeah.
VND thing, like vnd.cmb plus JSON or something, right? Version 1.
I haven't thought about that too much, but yeah.
It's probably something we should do, even if you accept without it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's just like minor claim stuff, but like.
Yeah, we can basically copy paste that from some other stuff, Travis. I think we should put that in.
Yeah. I'll add that too. Thanks, Terrence. Any other top of mind thoughts from anyone else as I begin to wrap this up?
The only other thing for me was just it's probably not even super important was just the FutureWorks comment Emily made about the matches being split out, the query things.
Yeah. Do you think that we want to support both matches and the finer grained fields themselves? Kind of like have an OR? Would they be like an OR together? Like matches, and if someone uses matches as a query parameter and namespace, which is ns, with basically that'd be like OR together, like anything that follows matches or namespace would be part of the results.
I would
Well,
think
I like
it's an
the idea
and.
of and, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Um,
So I think of and between all the other specific fields, like yeah, ns and name, that those would be anded together. But matches is, I guess, what's the point of matches in this case?
what's that? Yeah, I think it's the idea that if you do a field, I think Emily said it's an exact match. So like you could say ns equals like the Heroku Buchanan build
Heroku.
packs, but I want to
Yeah.
find, say, like all the function build packs in that space, right?
Got it.
Function. And you can imagine extending matches to searching descriptions when we have that too, right? So it's like a fuzzy match over a bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
Sort of like how GitHub search works, right? I type in the word that I want issues for, but I can say whether the issue is open or closed or something like that.
Yeah, it's out of scope
that
of
makes
the
sense.
like current RFC, but you know, there's a comment on it in the future work, so it'd just be nice to get your thoughts on that. Not that it's like a blocking thing for this one.
No, cool. No, that makes sense to me. Okay. Great. Thank you. That's all I have right now.
All right, let me pull up the descriptor keys because it ties into this. So as part of the stuff we were talking about in the response payload with the latest, there's a few fields that don't exist in Buildpack TOML. So I just created an RFC to add those. The three, I added a third one since most of you looked at it, that Terrence recommended, are description, which is a free text field, licenses, which has the same schema as Buildpack TOML, and then keywords, which is an array of strings. I'll skip down to the spec changes. This is what it would look like. I think I said Buildpack TOML earlier. Licenses and project TOML is maybe what I meant. But yeah, this is what it would look like. And then these would be used by the registry. And then we'd store them in the backing database that we've been talking about, and they'd be searchable. Description and keywords would be searchable. Licenses would be used to present in the UI. I think that one's pretty important.
I guess the only other nit is you probably just need to add the keyword thing, since you add that last minute into your spec change. Oh, it's right there. String. Okay.
Yeah. Alternatives are worth talking about. This does not have to go in Buildpack TOML. We could put it somewhere else, put it in package TOML, because we're only going to process this stuff after it becomes a build package, since the registry only supports build packages. Or we could just decouple it completely. We could, put like a puts endpoint on the search API that lets you put a description or something like that. Sounds like a huge pain in the butt because we'd have to do auth, but it's definitely a thing that's possible. We could put it in the index. So a few alternatives like that, but I'm definitely proposing Buildpack TOML. And Terrence made a good point for why the licenses should be, because that could change between versions.
I definitely feel like I was going to create an RFC to put a description field on Buildpack TOML for reasons that had nothing to do with the registry anyways, right?
For inspect?
For inspect. I think it makes a lot of sense, and it's consistent. I don't see any reason why builders have a description, but Buildpacks don't. It's just as useful in inspect Buildpack as it is in inspect builder.
Yeah, I think
Cool.
the big advantage out from the alternatives too is that similar to the other package indexes, it's a way you can update. You can just publish a new build pack to update the description, right? Like we don't have to have a separate mechanism for doing that.
Yeah, you mean like the API endpoint I was talking about, right?
Yeah, just anywhere. We
Yeah.
already have like a single auth thing that is
Right.
hardened down for that. And it's just like if you want to make a change to metadata stuff, like you just update your build pack toml like you would do in npm land or Ruby gems or etc. Right?
Yep. Emily, were you suggesting or asking if this should be in metadata as opposed to the build packs table in this comment?
No, this is like such a nitpick point. But you were saying it's the only thing that didn't have like a purpose.
Yeah.
And we have a whole table of things that don't have a purpose other than to describe things. Yeah. So I don't think it's
but that's also
in that sense.
But that's also free form, right? And these are like the keys are defined. So what I was calling out here by calling it non-machine readable, which isn't totally accurate, is that the values don't change. Like nothing in the machine changes because of the value of these keys. Whereas like version, there's implications there. The ID even gets parsed. License, there's all sorts of things that mean something, but like description and keywords wouldn't change some behavior. So it may even be like irrelevant. Name, I forgot about name, which actually wonder if we should deprecate name or change it to title or something, because we've been using the second part of the ID as name a lot. And that could get confusing to anybody that digs into the implementation of this. But I also feel like it's fairly natural to have a name as part of the data if you're writing a build pack toml. So I don't know.
Well, name's like human readable, right? Or is that not
Yeah,
true?
it's supposed to be like the human readable name, but
Problem is the registry uses name to mean something else, right?
Yep, it's a subset of the ID if it's properly formatted. And those two can coexist. Like it's strictly at the end of the day, the only place they collide is in a database table that isn't even spec'd out. But I think for anybody that actually was like digging into our spec and some of the implementation for the registry, they'd get really confused.
Yeah, I'm all about toml schema cleanup and consistency, right? Like if someone opens up a build pack toml and sees this name field and thinks they can pass it to the name query parameter in the search API and it doesn't work.
Right, exactly. Yeah, right.
Great.
I could include that as part of this RFC if we want to deprecate it or change it to title or something.
I don't know if that's to me, name in the build pack toml is pretty much what I think of as human readable name. I don't in any way associate it with the ID, right? And so I think the only conflict comes when we're talking about the registry. And so I do wonder if the rename really makes more sense to be there, right?
Yeah, but that's hard. It's like literally the only reason. It's hard.
Well,
I kind of agree with you though.
Like, how is it hard? I guess maybe one of them could be org and ID, right? And then the overall could be
no, it can't be ID. It can't be ID because that would. No. Now you've gone too far.
Well, I mean, I'm just kind of thinking out loud, right? But there's alternatives to name.
The reason that would be challenging is that it would be a big refactor, like tons of tiny little changes in pack, and then the registry, and it would just be a huge pain in the butt. But I'm not ruling it out.
I feel like that's still easier than getting users to do things, right?
Yeah, well, yeah, that's true. But we don't have to have them do anything. We can make this. We can write an RFC. We can start ignoring name or warn on it, and just leave it be. So. Let's keep it out. Let's keep it out of this. Yeah, let's punt it. And it'll definitely be in my mind because I've been aware of this. I've just been dreading it. So.
Doesn't Steven have a list for stuff that we want to tackle for 1.0? Can we just put it in that bucket?
Yeah. Think so.
That is the bucket, and we keep talking about making it a real something in a real place and just never do.
Place we put things so we feel better about having put them somewhere and then never look at them again.
The junk drawer. It's the junk drawer where you put like
Exactly.
paper
Or the
clips
drawer
and
of
scissors
shame.
and yeah.
Yeah, we'll take that on, I guess, as a core team to
Yeah.
have a formal place.
Yep. That's it for this one. Then take a look at it. I don't think it's urgent. We can definitely do it. Like, it doesn't block the search API, but I think we'd want to do it before we like launched it. So.
I feel like if it wasn't so hard, this would be the worst possible one from a actually doing it perspective. But what's the ID now? You could call like the ref, and then you have a namespace and ID. But that touches literally everything under the sun.
Well, no, I kind of like ID. The thing is, the namespace and name aren't really exposed to like 90+% of end users, right? To them, it's just an ID that's, or like in the same way that like what you're talking about with ref and all those like terms are terms that people who use the Go Container Registry APIs need to understand. But like average developer who's like building a container and shipping it, those are just like something / something : something. Like that's why people are so confused by like tag. Oh, is tag the whole thing or is it the part after the colon? I don't really care. And so for us, like the components of an ID, I don't think the end user really, I don't think we need to like name those in a way that is, you know, super careful about their meaning. Like I think the further out part of it, where the ID is, and then where the name is in the Buildpack TOM will matter more. I don't know if that made sense. Like we could call it namespace / foo, and nobody would know the better in most cases. So like namespace / title or something seems like it would work. Or namespace / ref or namespace / tag. I don't know. Namespace / repo.
Not tag.
Not tag, yeah.
Throw in UID again. Namespace / UID.
But it's not a UID.
Who cares? I mean, we just talked about it. Nobody cares. It could be foo.
Well, I'll write that one up probably in the early part of next year.
Good luck with that.
Thanks. It's just, I don't think it's gonna be a big deal. It's just gonna be toil. You know, like, fortunately, GoLand will probably refactor pretty nicely for me. I'm sure nothing else is named name in the code.
Yeah, the problem with Go code, of course, is that refactoring looks like, let's just do a string replace across the entire code base. That's what a refactor is, right?
It's a lot smarter now than it used to be.
Which is saying something, because I regularly like, oh, this is going to change 1,000 things I didn't want it to change. Scratch this. I'll just go make the changes. Like, it's not good now compared to like what it can do with Java.
At least when I did all my Go development in Vim, I knew I was just doing a search and replace across the code base.
Is that the last thing on the agenda?
I think so.
Okay. We should call it, except Emily, I need you to stay on the phone and tell me what the hell I'm doing wrong with your script.
I'm going to give you a different Zoom so it doesn't get uploaded to the YouTube channel.
I'll just watch the recording afterwards.
I was going to say,
Yeah. Okay.
have a good